Men of Reddit, what are some telltale signs that a woman is creepy? When she starts taking offense to doing anything without her involved. Had one girlfriend who insisted that she'd be with me for any outing. Watching movies with friends. Having dinner and drinks with the guys. She always found a way to come along. When I asked why she was so insistent on going everywhere with me, she said she wanted to make sure I wasn't talking to any other girls. And shortly after told me to cut off contact with every girl I regularly talked to. Which really just signaled a huge jealousy insecurity problem. I told her I wasn't going to do that and to be assured that I chose her to be in a relationship with. If I wanted anyone else I would not have signed up to be with her. That didn't stop her though. One day I went out to have BBQ with the guys without her and noticed on the way there and on the way home a car was following me. It was her making sure there weren't any girls I was talking to. I broke it off with her after that. After a few days of her sending a constant bombardment of angry texts she finally left me alone. This girl I met on Tinder had me take her out to a restaurant and then switched tables with her friend. They had been on blind dates and decided to switch. Her friend was not as attractive and I was very uncomfortable. After ordering my food I went to the bathroom for 10 minutes to contemplate my exit strategy. When I got back they had both left. The other guy asked if he could sit with me so we had dinner and he ate his date's enchiladas. It was actually kinda fun after they left. Outright refusing to believe that a guy might not be into her advances. I've seen a woman stare in bewilderment at her boyfriend after he had to repeatedly remove her hand from his crotch because she couldn't comprehend that he didn't feel like getting felt up in a public area. I've also had a woman, middle-aged, throw a tantrum because I wouldn't buy her a drink when I, 22 at the time, was at a bar, while I was with my parents and some visiting family members. My ex would like freak out and throw things and scream at me. That's not the disturbing thing. She would ducking forget about it, hit reset and act like it didn't happen the next day. Over and over. I started filming her episodes to prove to myself I wasn't going crazy. That's called gaslighting. It's a form of emotional abuse and I most often see people who are very insecure deep down use it. In high school there was a girl who liked me. She ended up carving my name into her foot. She'll joke about having kids before you're even in a serious relationship. I went on a couple dates with this one girl who had mentioned how much she wanted kids. Nothing unusual. Pretty common actually. I'm looking forward to being a dad one day. Then she started sending me those weird things where you put two people's pictures together and see what their kids would look like. One time would be quirky. But she sent me a different one every morning for a week. Broke it off when I realized I hadn't even given her a picture of myself. Edit, the only social media I have is Reddit. But I guess people can get anything on the internet. TLDR. Girl I hadn't talked to in 4 years started messaging my friends asking why I hadn't responded to her good morning text at 10 in the morning. Met this girl in church group in middle school. We got to know each other because of the group but didn't really become friends or anything. Stopped going when I went to high school and never talked to her for 3 years. She commented on a FB status I had and we got to chatting and I agreed to hang out the next weekend. I asked if we should invite other people in our old church group since I hadn't seen any of them in a while and she said no. I thought this was cause she liked me and wanted to hang out with me so I was flattered. I kept talking to her throughout the day. The next morning I woke up around 10 AM to about 7-8 missed calls. 2 voice messages. And countless text messages from her. I was pretty creeped out by then. The nail in the coffin was one of the messages I got was from an old friend from the church group asking me if I talked to that girl. I was confused how my friend knew I talked to this girl the day before. Turns out the girl started messaging my friends asking when I wake up in the morning and why I hadn't messaged her back. I had a girlfriend who yelled at me for spending $9,000 on my mountain bike instead of on her. I race professional and I took her out to dinner at least 3 times a week and got her gifts all the time. Plus we got to travel the world thanks to sponsors. But the one purchase for myself was too selfish. Update. Or a MHSP2 with box components. Literally my roommate's girlfriend. He takes her out to dinner 3+ times per week. Travels 50 miles every week back and forth to visit her at school. Buys her jewelry and nice things. etc. Yet the one time he couldn't make it to her school for a visit, she called him to scold him for his selfishness and then broke up with him via text. The saddest part is that he drove all the way to her school that night to talk to her about it. And she fell asleep before he arrived, and so he had to sleep in a parking lot in his car overnight until she woke up. Somehow they're still together. Makes me mad because he deserves so much better. Edit, I'm scared. 60,000 texts will do it. Not 65,000. She asks you your sign. Then giggles. Gives crazy eyes. And says we're compatible. Run. Just run. When she has decided you are her best friend after being around you for an hour. Humble brag. Your Legos room isn't that cool, Steve. She's hot but still interested in you. When after 2 days she tells you she loves you. And also proceeds to mention that she loves your green eyes so much that if we ever broken up she would steal them while you sleep and keep them in a jar in her room. She asks what your religion is. And when you give an answer different than hers you hear her mutter, we could work on that. Happened to me. She was a weekly churchgoer and I'm atheist. Oh yes. I had an absolutely gorgeous Southern Baptist girl in college take a liking to agnostic atheist me. It didn't last long, especially after she partied too hard. Overslept and missed a final and failed a class and just said oh well. It's part of God's plan. And carried on like nothing happened. I don't want any part of that level of a lack of personal responsibility. Full stop. When she thinks my beard hair is public domain. Drum girls at bars ducking love to just walk up and grab my beard or run their fingers through my hair. Excuse me, itch? I don't ducking care how hot you think are. Keeping your greasy ducking thought fingers away from my ducking face. If you would like to touch either. Ducking say hey, you have a real nice beard hair. Would you mind if I felt it, and I'd be happy to give you a go. But don't ducking think for 1 second that you're entitled to just start touching me just because you're hot. It's creepy AF and makes me uncomfortable. Not to mention, who the hell likes random people grabbing their face? If I just walked around drum grabbing girls' faces or hair, I'd be in jail by the end of the night with a pie and an assault charge. But these girls just run around ducking touching people and think it's okay. They are always talking about themselves, and when they are it's always about some small instance blown out of proportion to make them seem like a constant victim of the world. I am a woman. And I have had a few friends who do this. Having conversations with them is borderline impossible and downright exhausting. I've tried to limit contact with them because it's just too much. Inability to apologize for anything ever. Punishing you, silent treatment for doing something you had no idea would be offensive to them. Having expectations of you that they don't try to meet themselves. An all-consuming obsession with horses. An inability to live her life as it is now. Instead being laser focused on getting a husband and then having children. I'm not talking about normal long-term goals here. I mean a single girl who's always talking about finding her husband and having kids. When the proper next step is finding a boyfriend. The step after that being engagement. Then marriage. Then having children. FWIW. Every girl I've known who is like this has also lived rent-free with parents. Which tends to limit one's romantic opportunities. YMMV. Of course. I've posted this before. But a long time ago in the 90s I was set up on a blind date. The girl knew way too much about me. She knew my brother's names, where I grew up, and other personal stuff you'd have to dig a little to find out. This was pre-Facebook. And back in the 90s she would have had to ask people who actually knew me to find out. She was just a friend of a friend of a friend kind of thing. So I noped out of that one pretty quick. Later, I asked the people who had set up the date what the hell etc. And turns out the girl had had this super long crush on me and was reportedly devastated that I wasn't into her. Luckily I steered clear of that possible Stephen King novel scenario. Long black fingers with heavily pointed fingernails. Arched back at the neck with eyes as black as pitch. Mouthless face. Matted hair. Pungent scent. Speaks telepathically through visual symbols. Carries a belt of skulls and only appears after dark. When she tried to blame her constant control and guilt antics on a bad reaction to her birth control. We lived about an hour away from each other and she called me from her car in my driveway. And insisted, almost breathlessly for 20 minutes, that she had to see me and explain this in person. Which I absolutely refused. She knew I was home. My car was there. But the whole thing was so out of the blue and stalkery. I told her over and over I didn't want to see her and she could say whatever it was over the phone. And all this after I told her clearly weeks before I hoped we could be friends. But that we should go no contact for a couple months to let things settle. I found out later why she was so insistent. In the 3 weeks since I broke up with her, she was basically starving herself. Exercising obsessively, and she was a total couch potato prior, and lost around 20 pounds. She convinced herself the reason I broke up with her was because she had gained a little weight. She thought once I saw her I would change my mind. I didn't even know what to think of that. Slightly offended because she thought I was that shallow. And even more creeped out that she had her head so far in the sand she invented an imaginary problem solution for me leaving her instead of seeing her own behavior for even a second. She goes through your drawers when you're sleeping. My cat used to do that. I used to always wake up to socks all over my bedroom and have no idea why. Until one time I woke up in the middle of the night to see my cat systematically taking socks out of my sock drawer and then discarding them elsewhere. Calling up to my job and saying she's my wife and she's trying to get a hold of me. We had 2 dates, Linda. I didn't even duck you. But you're ducking crazy. Leave me alone, Linda. WHOTF is even named Linda anymore. When she is a colleague from work and she turns up at the gym coincidentally 5 minutes after you have arrived and she's in a low-cut top and starts laughing and touching your arms and bending over and just generally being weird. Especially when she knows that you have a wife and kids and this 45-minute session is the only piece you get 3 times a week. This one is a mixed bag. But demanding to have access to your phone. Social media accounts. Et al. I feel people deserve some privacy, yes. Oxymoron, as I'm referring to social media. As their phone's accounts can be a direct line to their inner thoughts. People used to keep their inner thoughts, you know, in their head. If they feel the need to confirm via your phone accounts you are A, not cheating, and B, not saying anything they would take offense to, I would look for the door, kick them to the curb, definitely not marry them. Edit, spelling. She gets on top. Gets a night twitch. Then sticks a razor to my throat and says, "Do you trust me?" I say yes. For a couple good reasons. She the cuts me. Starts sucking the blood. Grinding harder. And really into it. I mean, it was hot. But not. Yeah, no. When they tell you extremely personal details that are supposed to make you sympathetic but just make you uncomfortable and not sure how to react. Had a girl who told me on the way to park that her first time was in a park, already kinda personal, and that she was raped. She said it really casually too. More power to her if she's moved past trauma. But just casually dropping it in conversation was a red flag. When she knew the barracks I was staying at just by a selfie alone even though I was on the other side of the country at the time. She never served. And she has never been to that area before. That phone call got real awkward. Second date is to a federal prison to visit her son that's doing life for med there. Later saying the phone she snuck in her cooch made her too sore for 6 tonight. Girlfriend was practicing her signature. And asked if she could see mine. Innocent enough. Right? I rattle off a few beautiful Johnny Handcocks on a napkin. And beyond admiring my own handiwork. Don't think of it any further. Fast forward a week. And she says, "Check out my new tattoo." Sure enough, it's my signature. First name only, on her right or wrong hip. Yikes. Fast forward to her solo European trip. Turns out she cheated on me with a guy with the same first name. Bet he was scared. Talks about all the health ailments she thinks or is convinced she has. And then continues to consume foods which she claims she is extremely allergic to, all that wreaking havoc on her health. And holy fuck. As I was typing this, a text from her came in telling me about some random health ailment. A girl I befriended in college seemed pretty cool at first. But I quickly learned she had huge attention seeking problems. I took her to a party where she was all over me. Arm in arm. Holding my hand everywhere we went. I wasn't allowed to be alone. When I was talking to another pair at the party. A couple at that. She kicked it up a notch. Trying to kiss and be cuddly and whatnot. I was fine with it at the time because, hey. She sees nice. She's cute. A little intense. But could be misreading it. But I was certainly into her. It was kinda nice being the target of someone else's affection like this. After the party I walked her back to the dorm and she very informatively told me not to try anything because she had a boyfriend. Bonus. Same girl a few weeks later told me that if I had really wanted to sleep with her I shouldn't have told her I was straight because she can't help but turn men. I went on a date with some interweb rando girl years ago. The first date was nice. But she struck me as being pretty strange. That's fine with me though. I like strange chicks. We planned on doing a second date. And she stood me up. I texted her later that night. And her excuse was basically, I'm so sorry. I got sick and couldn't make it. I was pissed. But willing to give her a second chance. And said that she could have just texted me to let me know. Because I would have understood. We scheduled another date. And the same damn thing happened. She didn't show. I was legitimately pissed off now. I called her a couple hours later. And I made sure to be very polite and civil. But I told her that this wasn't gonna work out if she was going to no-show 2 out of 3 times. She then started basically begging. Saying that it wasn't her fault because she was sick again. I reiterated that she should have just texted me to cancel. And she said that she couldn't because her mom took her phone away. I told her that I was still done. And she tried to have me talk to her mom to vouch for the fact that she was without a phone earlier. We were not high school kids, we were both employed adults. So you can understand how strange this sounded. I noped right the hell out of there after hearing the excuse couldn't make it tonight, my mom took my phone. Ducking weird :